So this is not a guide to absolutely everything that happened in sustainable fashion this year, but it is a pretty good basic overview of all the news, controversies, main headlines basically of what happened. And I'm going to run through them really quick to keep this video short, but if you want to hear more about this particular subject, then just let me know in the comments or on my community tab and I'll see if I can do that for you. Okay, let's go straight into it. One of the main things this year with sustainable fashion was fast fashion brands kind of struggling and ultra fast fashion brands not struggling. So there's been a couple of brands that have had a kind of crappy year. Brands like Boohoo, who had to cut hundreds of jobs in the UK, and Misguided, who got bought out. All these kind of brands are finding it hard to deal with the current economic situation. But brands like Shein and Temu have found a niche market for themselves. Their ultra fast fashion is something that apparently consumers want, and they've seen Shein saw record-breaking profits the first half of this year. However, it's not been all good for Shein in particular. The company has faced quite a few ups and downs, the downs being legal battles, struggling to put forward an IPO in the US. Temu, the one brand I was talking about before, becoming one of their biggest rivals in such a short amount of time. A lot of negative press towards them, and France's petition to ban them, which is a really big market for them. And of course, the infamous influencer trip, which had Twitter and main news outlets as well arguing for a while. In general, I just say they've had quite a lot of public awareness growth this year, but that hasn't always been a good thing for them. However, they have had some good things happen. Like I mentioned, record-breaking profits in the first half of this year, buying new labels to expand their market reach. So they're partnering with Forever 21, I believe, and they've also bought Misguided here in the UK. And I've done a video on that if you want to watch a bit more on that. I think one of the most interesting statistics to come out of sustainable fashion this year is the idea that Shein in France gets 1.6 million daily viewers to their website. That's crazy. I don't know what the population of France is, I'll put it up, but that's just insane. In a more broad sense, rental and repair companies aren't doing that well this year. They've struggled with the changing market, prices rising, consumers not being that interested in the products, or just trying to make it financially viable, and we've seen a lot of brands kind of shutting down or descaling, which isn't great, but we have seen some growth too. Depop, Vinted are both doing really well. Vestiaire Collective actually announced they were banning fast fashion, which is a good move for the brand, in terms of upping their quality, and maybe that will make people go to them more if they know they're not going to be bombarded with Zara and H&M cast-offs. But there is some controversy there too about how we sell on our fast fashion and whether this is a good approach when a lot of us have fast fashion that we need to sell on. Where do we do it if brands start banning it? So there's been a bit of discourse about that, which is really interesting. And speaking of rental, we saw a lot of brands launching their own rental initiatives. I spoke about H&M launching their in-store resale service, which I didn't really like, but in terms of bringing awareness to the cause was quite a good move. There's so many brands, I can't even name all of them, that have started to do repair or resell or renting in this year, but pretty much every brand has brought on at least one of these new initiatives, and I think it shows a massive shift in the culture and what brands are hoping to change their business structure into as we become more sustainable in fashion. Oh, I have to do this quick. Okay, so like I said, brands are starting to become a lot more sustainability focused, and that is partly due to the new legislation coming in. We haven't seen much progress in terms of actual legislation passing, but we have seen a lot of kind of intention to pass, or hope that these will pass soon, and brands need to start focusing on that now in order to comply, which is why you've probably seen a lot less of brands advertising their products as green or good for the planet, because they don't want to be hit by greenwashing lawsuits. Like the APA obviously put out their guidelines, and not complying with these would threaten them with a lawsuit. So we have seen a little bit of a decrease in greenwashing, in my opinion, this year, but it is still rampant, and I think brands are getting sneakier. So there's still that to consider. But in general, you will have seen a lot less of the really like flowery sustainability language like green, eco, because brands now need evidence to back it up, essentially, in the UK at least, but a lot of countries are bringing in their own guidelines. I think like a direct sort of result of this is that we've seen a lot of fast fashion brands drop their sustainability labels, and obviously they have kind of given another reason for that. Like Zara said that they could drop their Join Life label because they said they no longer need to differentiate between these products and their normal collection, but it's pretty obvious that they're just trying to comply with the new greenwashing legislation. Like they're trying to imply that a large percentage of their products are now sustainable, so they don't need a label on them to differentiate, but they just don't want a greenwashing fee. While we're on this kind of like, you know, companies and countries being at war, there have been a lot more brands that have been questioned about their links to forced labor in China, which is really great. Obviously Shein with their IPO were facing some tough questions from US lawmakers about whether they could prove that their cotton didn't have links to the Uyghur region, and a lot of brands are now facing similar sort of inquiries about whether they can prove their innocence, I guess. And spoiler alert, a lot of brands can't because supply chains are so opaque. There's no real progress when it comes to the fashion industry and the forced labor links to China. So I'm hoping this is one of the things we see in 2024. This kind of leads me on to my next point, which is the waste colonialism debate and how the global south has started to reject our cast-offs this year and stand up for themselves, which is great. So Uganda banned the export of clothing from Western countries, and we've seen a lot of countries coming out and saying we don't want your old clothes anymore, they're ruining our economies, and that is so great. We need to be making sure that the countries that are producing this waste are also the ones that have to deal with it, and I think this is only going to get better as we go into 2024. One of the issues that is still to sort of come out and is just kind of being like talked about in the underworld right now is the issue of fraudulent organic cotton. So nothing's been proven, nothing's been like, you know, written about in the New York Times or, you know, actually verified, but they're saying there's a lot of evidence to back up the fact that the organic cotton trade, particularly in India, I believe, is, you know, actually just cotton, and people are faking their certificates because they can't produce the material on the scale that the fashion industry needs, or, you know, they haven't been able to grow enough crop due to environmental conditions. There's all these reasons, but they're still putting down that these items are organic cotton. And yeah, I think it'll be a big expose when it hits, because obviously with sustainability being where it is, brands all want organic cotton, so it will impact a lot of brands when it comes out that their products aren't what they've been saying it is. Last kind of one is Alden Wicker's work exposing the dirty chemicals in our clothing. I really recommend you go and read some of her stuff on this, because obviously she's so much more of an expert than me, but it has caused shockwaves in the industry this year as we find out exactly how bad clothing is. There was this quote I saw in an article which really stuck with me as like the crux of the issue, which is that CEOs of the brands we all shop from, it does not name which CEO of which brand, but you can kind of guess it's going to be a fast fashion brand. CEOs of fast fashion brands basically will not wear their clothes off the hanger like you and I would do when we go buy something from Zara or H&M. They make sure it's washed at least twice. And there's no sort of like, you know, public discourse, public like disclaimers about the fact that we should be doing the same. So they're happy for us to sort of suffer and have these chemicals on our skin and all the health issues of that, but they won't do it. And that's what made me so mad this year. But anyway, I hope you found this useful, and again, let me know if you want me to go into any more detail on any of the subjects. I'll try to do that, but if not, have a lovely week and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.